And Magnus switches it up, not allowing Alireza with a knight jump to g5. The earlier game where Magnus had first developed with his own knight, this time starts with the bishop, so taking away that possibility, making it a slower game.
Yes, it's the slow version of the Italian game, the Gyokyo piano, as they sometimes call it. White pawn pushes on the queen side. He was trying to trap Black's dark squared bishop. Magnus says no. He's created a nice hiding spot for it. But this is actually something we saw earlier in the event, in the clash between Wei Yi and Sindarov. In that match, it was Sindarov striking out very quickly in the center with Black, with a pawn push to d5, and it rebounded very, very quickly. So who's done the better homework? Who's this position going to favor? Full of tension. A good choice, I think, by Alireza Firouzja, keeping all the pieces on the board in his quest to strike back.
And again, these openings, so much about the nuances and the subtleties of where your pawns are, where your bishops are placed. Will he move it back to b3? Will he bring the rook next to that central file? Magnus has done his homework. He doesn't go for that d5 break, which was premature earlier on in the game. And h3, taking away bishop to g4. No pins there. Magnus retreats with his own bishop, and we see thematic plans being played out here.
Yeah, this is very standard stuff for the Italian game. It's all about maneuvering up until around move 20 when things often start to open up. But for now, one black knight is landing on the g6 square. Those two black knights are going to act as guardians of the black king, maybe leaping forward if given the opportunity to attack. And normally the white knight does the same. It echoes by going back to f1 and parking itself on g3. Only then will they decide what to do with the center, with the rest ones. We would see a cool tactic after a knight trade. And the rook recapturing. Bishop takes f2. Watch out for this one, everyone at home. Always look for checks and captures. The king retaking would allow a queen check, a double attack, hitting the king, winning the rook on the next move. And Alireza, of course, he dodges that and instead develops his bishop. So watch out for that tactic to persist. Black's sniper on a7, still looking very, very strong. Tanya, it feels like Magnus should be relatively happy with the outcome here.
With the black pieces again, right? You get a successful d5 against the Spanish or against the Italian. You are a happy camper. Magnus's knight on d5, now the pawn on e5 defended. And that bishop on a7 is beautifully placed. Always, always targeting the f2 pawn. Queen headed to f6 at the right point. The black knight can jump over to f4 or h4. I think this is a very, very pleasant opening outcome for Magnus. And for Alireza, he can't be pleased with what's just happened. Yes, he's got space on the queen side, but what's next?
He's going back to basics, Alireza. I've been watching his game since he burst onto the scene, even before he was a teenager, and he's been playing the Italian game in, game out. He went away from it for a few years, but he's back to his favorite opening. That shows he believes that his nature, his style can hit Magnus Carlsen.
I'm a little worried, though, because maybe he'll be able to hit against Magnus Carlsen over the board. Unfortunately, he's very close to getting into a 3-minute deficit. And okay, it's 9 versus 6 rather than 4 versus 1, so I don't want to overhype the moment, but if Magnus recognizes this opportunity and continues to play quickly, he now has an excellent way of piling an enormous amount of pressure on Firouzja. In a game, don't forget, he must win.
Yeah, and there's so much more to chess. Of course, it's about good moves, but sometimes if you know that you spend a lot of time in the middle game, often choosing openings where you can land 20 quick moves and kind of clarify half the board, that just saves you a bit of time, puts it in the bank for later. Alireza, though, he loves maximum tension. He loves using maximum time and getting down to that adrenaline-packed last few minutes.
I think it's time to get concerned about Alireza's clock right now. You know, it's early days in the game, but there are a lot of pieces. Nothing's been traded off. Only a set of pawns right now. So a lot of critical positions, decisions do lie ahead here. And it also shows the confidence and the style of the position, the nature of the game that is as right now. For Magnus, I think it just suits him. It's easy play, pieces are developed, no big weaknesses. Alireza, where are those complications? Where is that chaos that he thrives in? It's still a far way off. And the problem is, when and if that does happen, he will not have enough time. Magnus's knight, it moves forward. This is starting to get a little tricky for white.
And we glimpsed Alireza's screen a moment ago. He just pushed his c-pawn forward one square, but his mouse was still hovering over this pawn. It looked like he was getting ready to push it yet again in order to block in Black's dark squared bishop. We talked about that sniper, some tricks in the air. It looked like he was going to play that, but again, not trusting his instincts. His mouse was ready to make that move, pushing the pawn forward to the c5 square, but he's paused and, okay, changing his mind now. He first takes the black knight, which will be replaced by a pawn, or maybe the other black knight, barring a sacrifice of the e5 pawn. And Alireza, the clock time, 4.5 minutes down. Something's just off with the pace. He needs to speed up, as well as try to land a blow on the board.
He's so good when his clock runs down, but again, not when he allows his opponent such a big advantage on the clock. We choose to recapture here with the knight.
And yet another pawn sacrifice. The second time Magnus has offered up this pawn in the center on e5. Again, it feels poisoned, taking the bait like that, especially with a knight near your king, especially with the black dark square bishop poised, feels wrong. I think in the center there, black's rook would open up, black's light squared bishop would have jumped out the way, and it would have been disaster. So ultimately, he does play this idea that he was hinting at with his mouse over there on c5. And black's bishop on a7, not too happy. I do like this last move from Firouzja. He's asking Magnus some questions.
So c5 here has the potential to completely lock out that long diagonal for the bishop. If you really wanted to lock it down, which I don't think he needs to at this time, you could even push a5 to drive the point home. The light squared bishop on a great square, which is probably why it instantly gets traded off. And yeah, Magnus not particularly happy with the lack of scope for the dark squared bishop in the long run. Why not lash out at this straight away?
This is getting fun now because there's a lot of tension on that left flank, but also big knight jumps on that right side as well of the board. The white knight also heading to f5, but I like this approach by Magnus. He's targeting the base of that mini pawn chain to try to activate his bishop on a7. The one move you definitely don't want to make is pawn takes pawn. You double up the a pawns, you allow the bishop to slide over, pick up the c5 pawn and come under a lot of pressure on the a file, and it's under these pressure moments that mistakes happen. And for Alireza, an inaccuracy on the board. He tries to complicate matter under 3 minutes, d4, and a lot of tension there. Which pawn is Magnus going to pick up?
Yeah, probably this pawn that's just put
On b4 drops. The knight on e6 is naturally attacking the pawn on c5 together with the bishop. So this is playing into Magnus Carlsen's plan. It's making his moves a little bit more natural to make, which is not good when you have less than half the time of your opponent.
Yeah, those two white pawns are about to drop off. He's hoping here for Firouzja to create some counterplay with his own knights, I guess. The white rook and white queen quite active. Magnus frowning. This is Magnus's longest think of the game so far. He knows that he has the advantage, a draw enough as well. And sometimes that's a situation you don't necessarily want to be in, where you're caught in two minds. Do you press an advantage, or do you just try to shore up the defenses? Magnus, meanwhile, what is the most risk-free move? I think that's what he's asking himself.
And that's the thing, like, Alireza is in a must-win game right now. It's a dead man's draw for him. It's as good as losing. So he needs to, even if he doesn't want to, create these dynamics on the board, even if that means objectively he'll end up in a worse position. He's ready to sacrifice material to get that piece activity, whether it's a knight planted on d6 or the open b line for his rook or queen. Alireza wants a fight, and Magnus ticking down on the clock.
I think almost breathing a sigh of relief that Magnus is taking so long, trying to work out how it's possible to maybe put the result of this game beyond doubt. It's also giving Alireza plenty of time to think. You can see he's not hunching his shoulders quite as much as before. He's been able to use Magnus's time to hopefully calculate some of the moves that he's going to play too. I'm not sure it's enough to get him to play nice and freely, but you have noticed a slight change in his demeanor over the last 30 seconds or so.
Definitely, and there we go. Magnus doesn't play the best move according to the eval bar, question mark appears, but he's trying to play safety first chess. We cannot blame him for that, and there we go. Alireza knows a rook trade would guide this game closer to a draw. That's not enough, so he has to gamble. He has to speculate here. He keeps the rooks on.
But crucially, he did it instantaneously.
He's going to have to do that for a bunch more moves.
Big tension on the clock and the board. Rook e4, this does allow Magnus to again trade on b4 if he so wants. Magnus, he slows down, he does take. After rook takes pawn, that rook on d8 can slide one step forward and defend that b7 pawn. And still the attack on Alireza's weakness on c5 continues.
Alireza, he played the previous move instantly. He's gone back into the tank here. About 15-20 seconds invested and counting. Problem is that black bishop is so close now to breaking its way back into the game. The black knight coming back. The white knight's so far unable to get in.
You know, if you have to beat Magnus Carlsen, then you need to make the most of every single aspect and element of the game. You have to be up on the clock. You have to play the opening perfectly. Middle game, try to complicate things. End game, technique on point. And so far, the biggest problem in this match for Alireza has been the clock. Because in those final moments, we've seen the blunders happen.
It's beginning to look like the way to beat Alireza in this grand final is to give him choice. Because that is what Magnus Carlsen is using against him right now. I'm going to give you choices where you're trying to calculate when maybe the position and your clock certainly is calling for you to use your intuition a little bit more. Otherwise, you risk making mistakes in another minute. And it seems like 10 times out of 10, Alireza is choosing to hard calculate instead of trusting his intuition, which is odd because his intuition is so good. That's the reason why he is such a beast when his time gets low.
Exactly, Mr. Intuition, and right now Magnus has won a pawn. The black bishop is out. Most importantly, if the white rook goes to the top of the board with a check, the black bishop can drop back and block. That doesn't look super healthy for Magnus, but it's only temporary, and the black bishop is going to save the day. Alireza struggling to find any attacking resources, any follow-up to that check.
And this is concerning, right? You make a move, you give up a pawn, your opponent takes the bait, and then you again go into a tank, make a move that you're not super happy with, and it turns out to be a blunder. Alireza coming in with a double attack, but there are checks that he needs to be careful about.
Yeah, he's taking massive risk here. There are two checks that are very tempting for Magnus Carlsen. The black rook now able to infiltrate on the first rank. Magnus leaned back. I think he spotted something. The black bishop can maybe even jump in and sacrifice itself, something similar to what we showed earlier. Alireza smiling. He knows he's blundered. He spotted the refutation. Black has multiple winning moves here.
And Magnus starts with a flashy bishop takes pawn check on the board, and if this is captured, the knight will jump in with a check, forcing white's king to disconnect with the knight on g3. Knight d3 coming in, queen takes knight coming in. Alireza cannot believe it. He is the master of tactics, but he's the one on the receiving end of this one. Magnus